Hi and welcome to the DE Physical Education Flip Learning videos.
The respiratory system, structure of the lungs. Gaseous exchange. Gaseous exchange is concerned with getting oxygen in the air into the lungs so that it can diffuse into the blood and be transported to the cells of the body. The removal of carbon dioxide from the blood. The terms partial pressure and diffusion are used when describing the gaseous exchange process. Quite simply, all gases exert pressure. Oxygen only makes up a small part of the air, approximately 21%. It therefore exerts partial pressure. Since gases flow from an area of high pressure to an area of low pressure, it is important that as the air moves from the alveoli to the blood, then to the muscles, the partial pressure of oxygen of each need to be successfully lower. Here's an example of gaseous exchange. As you can see, as it's entering the capillaries, it's flowing through the 1 cell thick capillaries into our alveoli and then heading back out using the respiratory system. It will go from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration and vice versa. Here there'll be a high concentration of O2 and it will swap where there is a low concentration of O2 and it will exchange throughout. At the same time, the carbon dioxide is doing the same, goes from a high pressure to a low pressure. And this is how gaseous exchange happens. Key terms you should know. Concentration/diffusion gradient. Often referred to as the concentration gradient, it explains how gases flow from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. The steeper this gradient, the faster the diffusion will occur. Gaseous exchange in the alveoli. The partial pressure of oxygen in the alveoli is higher than the partial pressure of oxygen in the capillary blood vessels. This is because oxygen has been removed by the working muscles, so its concentration in the blood is lower, and therefore it has partial pressure. The difference in partial pressure is referred to the concentration or diffusion gradient, and the bigger this gradient, the faster the diffusion will be. Oxygen will diffuse from the alveoli into the blood until the pressure is equal in both. Diffusion pathways. The oxygen pathway starts in the alveoli, then to the blood, then to the muscles. The carbon dioxide pathway starts in the muscles, goes into the blood, then to the alveoli. The movement of carbon dioxide occurs in the same way but in reverse order. This time the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the blood entering the alveoli capillaries is higher than in the alveoli. So carbon dioxide diffuses in the alveoli from the blood until the pressure is equal in both. Here's the breakdown of the percentages of gas and water content inspired and expired air. For example, in inspired air at rest, oxygen is about 21% of what we breathe in. 0.03% is carbon dioxide, about 79% is nitrogen, and there is a varied amount of water vapour. Gaseous exchange at the muscles. The partial pressure of oxygen has to be lower at the tissues than in the blood for the diffusion to occur. As such, in the capillary membranes surrounding the muscles, the partial pressure of oxygen is 40 mmHg, and it is 100 mmHg in the blood. The lower the partial pressure allows oxygen to diffuse from the blood into the muscle, equilibrium is reached. Conversely, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the blood is lower than the tissues. So again, diffusion occurs and carbon dioxide moves into the blood to be transported to the lungs. Again, here's a breakdown of how gaseous exchange is happening and the difference in the partial pressures in the alveoli. As we can see, here in our red blood cell, the oxygen will be very high. The concentration will also be high. Here, the concentration will be low, and it's going to move from a high partial pressure to a low partial pressure as it diffuses through. At the same time, we've got high carbon dioxide in our capillaries and low in our blood cell. Again, it will move across until that equilibrium or the balance has occurred. And again, at the same time, it's happening on the other side as it's moving across, in and out, across our circulatory system. Six questions to test yourself. Pause the video now and answer these following questions. Number 1. In the muscle cell, the partial pressure of O2 is... Number 2. In the blood capillary, the partial pressure of O2 is... O2 will move from the capillary to the... In the muscle cell, the partial pressure of CO2 is... In the capillary, the partial pressure of CO2 is... And CO2 will move from the muscle cell to the... Once you've answered these questions, move the video on. In the muscle cell, the partial pressure of O2 is low. In the blood capillaries, the partial pressure of O2 is high. O2 will move from the capillary to the muscle cells, and in the muscle cell, the partial pressure of CO2 is high. In the capillary, the partial pressure of CO2 is low, and CO2 will move from the muscle cell to the capillary.